I'd like to call this meeting to order. Meeting with the Policy and Government Relations Committee tonight, Monday, April 8th. Do we have anybody on the schedule to give public comment tonight?
We do not.
Okay. And can we verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Excellent. All right. Our first action item this evening would be an approval of the minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
I so move.
Moved by Ms. Voigt. You have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wad. Any discussion or comment on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, let's move on to our policy and discussion information items this evening. Our first of which will be an overview of the Neola update 33. This is the number one update from December of 2023.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zenobia, and welcome, everybody. This update is a relatively small update, which is rare in Neola terms, but Julie and I did this with our consultant, Richard, on Monday, March 18th. We have a total of 20 policies in that update that are listed in your board docs and in your paper packet. Of those, two of those we're actually going to discuss for your possible consideration this evening, one being 7440. It was in the previous update and then had another update here in December, as well as 8310 public records, same scenario with two updates. So those two are on our agenda tonight. So out of the 20 total policies, 14 of them will come to our committee. So minus the two tonight, we have 12 remaining. Teaching and Learning has 2, Student Services has 2, and F&F has 2. So we'll work through those and then probably have another update as we get near to the end of the summer, early fall. But overall, that's a pretty promising picture. So just wanted to give you that overview.
All right, any comments or questions on the overview? Moving on, then, we'll go to our next discussion item, which is Policy 7540.08, which is technology home use. There was a technical correction there.
Yes, so with this one, it's a very simple technical correction. On our February Policy and Government Relations meeting, we approved a new policy on artificial intelligence. You'll remember 7440.08. However, when we looked, we already had an existing policy with the same number of 7540.08, which is the District Technology Home Use Policy. So Julie updated that to avoid the duplication in numbers. This is just simply asking for, this is just us telling you, actually, that we're renumbering it to 7540.09 so that the policies don't overlap. Correct, Julie? Yes. Yeah, so just an information item.
Okay. Seeing no comment on that, let's then move on to our third discussion information item, which would be our Verkada update.
All right, so our Chief Information Officer of Technology, Mr. Schloman, who also, due to everybody watching the eclipse today that also films for us, is also filming for us this evening, but he is going to give us a Verkada security system update. You remember we made a significant investment, and you've been getting some updates on the progress of that security system upgrade as it progresses across the district. What I thought this could do, with Mr. Schloman giving you a little more information on how he has and how his technology department has aligned access to that system, that potentially would help you answer any questions prior to your considered approval of the 3 policies that we have that are in that area tonight: 7440 facility security, 7440.01 video surveillance and electronic monitoring, and 7440.02 smart monitoring equipment. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Schloman.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're trying to get the technology to work here, so let's, this is a loaner computer I have today, so my normal computer is in the shop, so I'm just trying to see if this is actually going to come up on the display here or not. Dr. Sieber, do you have that? You want to see if you can pull that up for me? Since this is not cooperating right now. Oh, you get it? Okay, hang on. I think it just came up for me. 5462. See if it's going to work. There we go. All right. All right. Here we go. I'm going to make this as quick as possible, but because I'm a basketball fan. We're going to go work through the access levels. I know that was a big concern about who has access. So we're going to talk mainly tonight about the access levels for the Verkada system. So the first section is, as you know, Verkada has many features that we've implemented. The first one is the security cameras. So as you can see, we're going to go through each access level and who has those assigned. So we've done this very systematically so that we can control basically, and it's automatically updated based on role in your job. So when you're assigned into that role, it automatically falls into place. So we don't have to worry about manually maintaining this. So first one, it would be district-wide. We're going to go from the widest scope down to the narrowest scope here. First one is the district-wide all cameras live and playback. So that means that you can see every camera in the district and you can play back history from those in the past. So if you look underneath that, you can see that the district administrators, that would be the cabinet and district level folks here at Blair. CRT, which is the crisis response team, essentially that's that same group plus you add in the SROs, and some a couple of people from the security section in buildings and grounds. The police department also has access to that at the dispatch center, and the higher level police officers at the district, at the station can log in and do that, and then IT admin. So we obviously need to have access to that so that we can troubleshoot that.
Does police also include the sheriff's department?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Building-wide, all camera live and playback. So now we've stepped down from the district level to the building level, and those folks would be the building admin team. So it would be all the administrators. At a secondary level, it would be the principal and any of the assistant principals. And at the elementary level, it would be the principal and their designated admin alternate. So you can see that usually there may be a dean of students there may be a guidance person, or there may be even sometimes a building secretary that's designated as the building admin alternate when the administrator is not in the building. So the third one down is building-wide, all cameras live only. That means you can look at live view, but you can't look at recorded playback. And that would be the building office admin team, so that would include stepping down to now secretary level in the office. Sometimes we need those folks to be able to look at live cameras, specifically when they're letting people in the doors, things like that. So. And then the next level down is, we're just calling this specific cameras live only. So we have some one-off instances where we need to have a certain function have camera view. For instance, the custodians, we give them exterior cameras to their building. And in case they're looking for snowfall, they're looking for unsafe conditions, they might be looking for, if they're a night shift custodian, they might be looking for vandalism that's happening outside, things like that. And then the receptionists would get access to their door cameras. So that's kind of how we're breaking down the building level, or the access to security cameras. Do we have any questions on that? Okay, go to the next slide, which is door access. So Verkada is also replacing our door access. So starting at the top again, we're at the district-wide access. So IT admin and then the buildings and ground security team are really the only ones that have district-wide access to all the door controls. Stepping down from that, we have district-wide door access reporting. So this would be in case you wanted to investigate a situation where someone had come in at an odd time, or you want to investigate whether they're, actually, if their badge is being used by someone else, things like that. That would be the district admin team again, so the cabinet and higher level people at the district office. Stepping down from that, we have door alerts. So these are situations at the building that would institute, let's say, a door held open, or someone went out a door at a certain time when they shouldn't have gone out that door. Those would be going to your building admin team. So again, your principals, assistant principals, and of course the SRO at the secondary level. And then the lowest level is a badge creation or activation, deactivation. And so we've got we got one person here at the district office and then one person in the buildings and grounds office that handle creation of badges or assigning those rights to doors for those district employees or contractors that it would have badges. Questions?
Question on the badges. So I'm assuming for the most part, we just do that currently just one time for employees? Will that change under Verkada?
No, pretty much the badges are exactly the same badges we had previously. The readers are the exact same, so none of that changed. All of our existing badges worked. In fact, we've converted them all over. We're 100% already over on Verkada for door access, and that went quite well. We do create a badge for each person when they're hired, and then we also replace their badge with no cost to them if the badge starts to malfunction or breaks. We do have a $10 fee if they lose their badge to replace it. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much the standard process that we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next one is guest management. So this used to be what we called Raptor, if you're familiar with that. When you go to a building, you get your license scanned, and it does a background check for you and prints you a little sticker, a visitor badge. We've converted that over to Verkada. We did that right away in the fall, and that went very well as well. We've had no issues with that system, really. But so guest management, the district-wide access is, again, just the IT admin group. And then the building-specific ones would be like the building receptionists and their backup would be the primary users of that system where they would check you in. So. And then the section below that is sensors. So these are new to us, vape sensors at the high school and middle school. And then those have access, the building admin team and the SROs have access to those dashboards. And then they would also be getting alerts when those vape sensors go off. They would be programmed to get alerts either on their cell phone or in their email that indicate that the vape sensor is activated. And then we also have environmental sensors, which are like vape sensors, except for they sense a lot more things. So they sense temperature. They also sense hazardous gases like chlorine gas, things like that. CO2, CO levels. We have one per floor in each building, and those are typically monitored by buildings and grounds to make sure that we don't have unsafe conditions in the building. So, any questions on that? Okay. So the last slide here is just going to indicate how far we are in our project. So elementary schools, we're 100% complete. At the high schools, we were about 80% complete. We made really good progress this year because of the weather. Weather was very cooperative for us, helped us get a lot of that stuff done. We had that week of rain, which kind of slowed us down a little bit, but really the only thing left at the high schools is exterior cameras to do there. Door access and everything is already complete, and the interior cameras are complete. And then at the middle schools, we're about 50% complete there, so we're anticipating that we will be 100% complete by probably mid-May. So, any questions on that? That is my last slide, so.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
Let's move on then to our first action item, which is 7440, facility security.
All right. So if you'll remember, we had this policy, we brought this forward in February. We tabled it. We had some questions. And tonight, I also invited our Director of Student Services, Mark Lennerer. Many of you, he makes frequent appearances as Student Services. This is his inaugural appearance at Policy and Government Relations, so thanks for being here, Mark. I thought he'd be able to help us answer some of the questions we had last time when we got into searches of non-student visitors and vehicles. Mark deals with the principals on that, primarily at the secondary level. And then there's also, as I mentioned earlier, another update from this most recent Neola update that Julie and I did in March that also is clarifying the use of metal detectors, which can include handheld wands, the swiper things, if we wanted to use those. And also acknowledges that school event supervisors are authorized to respond to school safety situations when an administrator is not present, as may be the case at after-school or evening events. So, with that being said, maybe would you mind if we if you recall back last month, 2 months ago, we had some issue with some questions around the searching of the non-student vehicles. Maybe I could just have Mark kind of explain some examples of how that might look and how that might work, and then we can play off that in questions after.
Yeah.
So I believe the specific question was about the highlighted paragraph under 7440 about searches of non-student visitors or vehicles to school property when there is reasonable suspicion of a violation of law or school rules, and the search is reasonable in scope related to the objectives of the search and not excessively intrusive. One of the situations where this may come up frequently is at any kind of a school-sponsored event. So let's imagine it's Friday night, there's a football game happening at one of our schools. There are students from other schools who are visitors to the district. They are there to attend the game. It's an hour before the game. They're tailgating in the parking lot, and their behavior starts to raise suspicions regarding, let's say, use of alcohol, for example. That might be a situation in which we may need to conduct a search. Understanding that school administrators have a lower threshold to conduct a search than law enforcement. Law enforcement needs probable cause. School administrators, because they're on school property, all we need is reasonable suspicion. So it would be reasonable for us to speak to the student, discuss, what they had been up to, ask to see if we could look inside the trunk of their vehicle, which they hastily closed as we were walking up, So it's that kind of a situation where there may be a need to conduct a search.
Any questions or comments for Mr.
Yeah,
Watt?
I just want to thank you for kind of clarifying that, because I know one of the concerns I had in reviewing the appellate case that ultimately led to, I think this
This policy change?
centered around the appropriateness of police officers conducting a search without probable cause. And I just wanted to make sure that we as a district had a clear delineation between when we authorize a search and when maybe our SROs do it in their official capacity.
Correct.
And making sure that we don't walk ourselves accidentally into a lawsuit thinking that we.
Correct. And, that was actually one of the things we discussed at our recent discipline norming meeting, which was an all-admin meeting on a Friday that I helped to facilitate. We talked about that difference between reasonable suspicion and probable cause, and, specific to, for example, searching a student's backpack. It's an opportunity for us to make sure that the school is safe, and that students are bringing appropriate items to school, and we can verify that through a search as needed.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I would be looking then for a motion to approve 7440.
I so move.
Moved by Mr. Wad,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Borowski. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Let's move on then to policy 7440.01, which is video surveillance and electronic monitoring. Thank you.
Okay. So this one is providing clarification on the notification concerning video and audio collection using software such as Verkada or that on school buses. The policy also refers to the school safety plan, determination of proper location of equipment, which may need to remain confidential. So as part of our school safety planning, we don't always divulge all of the components of the plan to protect that particular plan. And then finally, reference, as I mentioned earlier, is included to reference electronic monitoring on school buses, including specific regulatory authority for audio monitoring on the bus. So you'll see there's just a few corrections or modifications in yellow on this policy. In the first paragraph, specifically, no audio or video surveillance is permitted within the district other than those authorized by policy or the superintendent. And so that's where Steve's information earlier hopefully helps you feel more confident with the way that we'll use the system. We will put notice that video or electronic or audio surveillance are possibly being technologies that are being deployed. And then basically the surveillance on school buses, while, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, while Verkada has audio capacity, we're not currently using the audio capacity in Verkada, but on the school buses, it's the video as well as the audio that is being used. So that's the reason for the inclusion of audio in the policies in the specific example of school buses.
Okay. Ms. Voigt?
I have two questions. One, when it talks about the visible notice, like when you enter the building, there'll be a sign saying that we have video cameras, different things in place. Is that the expectation?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And secondly, in the paragraph under placement of surveillance, it mentions that private offices, unless there is an express consent given by the office occupant, would not be done. Would we want to have, like in the athletic director's office when they're confronting kids about policy violations, or in the AP's offices when they're, should that be a place where there is a monitoring of how the student is reacting to potential confrontation?
Yeah, come on up, Steve.
We can do that. I don't think the policy is stating that we would not do that unless the occupant was aware of that, I think is what it was saying. But we can do that, and in some cases, we have done that. For instance, in the enrollment office, we have camera in case there's some sort of confrontation there. But yeah, it is, we could do that, and it's possible.
Okay.
Mr. Moore? You have a question, comment?
Yeah, with that, I don't want it to get to a point where it's too many cameras and not allowing students to, these are students. Well, I hear Ms. Voigt, and I definitely understand her concern and stuff, and I'm not disagreeing with her. I just think that I just don't want it to get to a point where it's too many cameras where at some point, students and teachers and administrators deserve some level of confidentiality too, especially if it is a student and a teacher having a moment as a teacher, I can speak from experiences where students have cried to me in private, have, I'm confronting them about their behavior or situations, and that student is, maybe, not responding well in emotional, high emotions and things like that. Not anything like physical or anything like that, but the student is very high emotional. That student deserves that level of privacy, I will say. That family does too. And that teacher, in terms of that moment, to kind of figure out what's going on there. I just don't think too many cameras is the answer. I think cameras, put them where they're supposed to be, like you said, but don't overextend where it can cause problems and maybe not a good response from the public. So,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Mr.
Yeah.
Moore. Absolutely.
Are there any other comments or questions along that line, or? Mr. Borowski?
Yes, just back to the signage.
Yeah.
So I know we're still in the process of finishing up the Verkada implementation. Do we know, I mean, this is a policy that I'm assuming we're going to approve tonight. Do we know when the signage would be up to where we're complying with the policy? And, I know it's a technicality, but,
Signage is already up and it was up previously.
okay.
We've had signage on the doors already for the previous system.
Okay, and then regarding the signage, later we talk about the surveillance on school buses. I believe that first paragraph says there'll be signage on the buses as well. And if so, whose responsibility is that, the districts or the busing companies?
Well, I would say it would be our responsibility to work with the bus company to make sure they're doing it. I can verify whether or not they have signage already.
Okay.
Ms. Foyt?
And it mentions in the bus contract about the sign, about the expectation to have the video cameras there, et cetera, one or two, and different, depending on the route, et cetera. So I think it's definitely something
And I know it's
that's
in the-
been discussed.
Yeah, and it's in the parent sign-off when they're signing up for a bus that we have video surveillance and
Okay.
audio surveillance on the bus. But we'll make sure, it should be on the bus too, so that students see it.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure who was responsible, if it was the district or the bus company or both, or what.
Sure. I think it would be it's a great question. I think it'd be our expectation that they would hold that end of the bargain.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, but
Yep.
I wasn't sure, so, okay, thank
Oh,
you.
Good question.
All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve 7440.01.
Also move.
I heard Mr. Borowski first, seconded by Mr. Moore. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Passes 5-0. So moving on to 7440.02, which is then smart monitoring equipment, new policy.
All right. So this one, we also had in February, and you made a couple of suggestions which we thought were good. And Julie incorporated those in green, which now look yellow, into the policy. And again, this policy is referring to what Mr. Schloman talked about earlier, things like the vape detectors or environmental detectors. So there's one at the end of the first paragraph. Smart sensor and electronic monitoring may include smoke and vape detection, facial recognition, and overall school safety measures with or without the use of video monitoring. And there's another one at the end of the third paragraph. Video monitoring shall not be utilized in restrooms or locker rooms or where a reasonable sense of privacy exists. And then you can see Julie also put down on the bottom. It's important when we make our own recommendations that we note that, because the next time this policy gets an update, it won't look the same coming from Neola.
Right.
So we want to make sure we maintain our Waukesha pieces that we feel are important.
Okay. Any questions or comments on those? Mr. Moore?
going back to the third paragraph, like I said earlier, thank you, Mr. Zenobia. That's what kind of I meant, reasonable sense of privacy exists, where you're leaving it to that building administrator and the teacher's discretion on where, there's a gray area on what needs to be on camera, what doesn't, depending on the circumstance, basically, so.
Absolutely, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, and again, we, as Dr. Siebert had mentioned, we had talked a little bit of that at length a couple months back, and those have been placed in here, and I think have captured what we discussed, so. If there is no further discussion or comment on this policy, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Moore, seconded by Ms. Voigt. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passing 5-0. Then on to Public Relations Policy 8310.
All right, so this policy is coming to us from the previous update. It's on public records, which have become much more prevalent in school districts across the country. There are a number of different, Julie left for you the general records schedule for Wisconsin public school districts and related records. And if you could make any sense, we left all of that in there, all of those pieces that talk about the various schedules for records. What the recommendation from Neola is that we agree with is that we will, rather than take the different types, which we've tried over the years to remember which records we need to keep for certain amounts of time, which gets tremendously confusing at times, that we would just adopt the schedule that says we maintain all records for a period of 7 years. And so then it's uniform, it's consistent across the schools and across the district, and it'll be easy for us to maintain and understand. And then ultimately, the other thing that this policy does is it's always referenced me as the district records custodian. And then it includes a new component that identifies the positions of the district that constitute a local public office pursuant to 1932 D1DM, which are two criteria that I will work on identifying. One is a person who oversees building and grounds and makes decisions on purchasing, situations like that with an appropriate administrative license. That would be Mr. Clark, who oversees building and grounds, and Kyle and Chad. And then the other is, it speaks to people that have specific licenses to hold administrative positions. And what I need to do is a little work to see how far down does that go. I would assume that would equate to our cabinet level positions, but I'm not sure if it would go deeper than that. So I will ascertain that as we move forward with this policy, if you so approve.
Mr. Watt?
So I do have a question on this policy. It isn't necessarily around the changes that are recommended, but I actually have a couple questions. So I'm looking at these, let's see, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, where it talks about the district responding to requests as soon as practicable and without delay. I guess the first question I know this school district has seen a dramatic increase in open records requests over the last probably 4 years, would be my guess. Do we know about how long the average time is it's taking to fulfill a request that comes in?
I couldn't give you that, Mr. Watt. I mean, we've had hundreds, and they're all different based on the amount of specificity and/or broadness that they entail. So that language, as soon as practicable and without delay, is statutory.
That was my next,
Language.
is that straight from statute?
Yes, yes.
Does the statutes, or have there been any rulings that you're aware of that define for us what is no longer practicable or no longer?
Well, generally,
we can say-
generally speaking, I believe the standard is 10 days.
Okay,
We have a hard time meeting 10 days, particularly when we have higher than average volume.
okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Good questions.
Any other? Ms. Voigt?
My question would have to do with the costs that are defined on the top and then the second page of the printout. Are those the rates that we use, the 2 cents a page of black and white and $50 for the time of the district employee, et cetera?
It depends, again, Mrs. Voigt, on the request. Most of our requests request that there not be any payment charged, and we tell them that we will do our best to keep the costs down. We have charged in some cases, but that is that's more rare. But it is in the policy should we choose to do it. We found that generally speaking, it hasn't been worth it, if you will, for the strife that it causes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes, thank you, but I think that, yeah, it should stay there because, while that's very generous of you, Dr. Seaver, we're also running a school district, and I think that the cost of ink printing is very, expensive. And so if people are requesting open records requests so much and the volume is so high, you should charge them, depending on what they're asking for. I'm not saying every time or depending on if it's a little amount of paper or documents, but if it is an excessive amount of documents that people are requesting, especially groups of people or different things like that, that takes a lot of time and spent by employees in your district where they are assigned other tasks, daily tasks, like your executive assistant and things like that. That is reasonable to charge them for a convenience fee, for a ink printing. I'm not saying it has to be a very high amount. This is reasonable right here in the document, in the policy.
Sure.
But that's my opinion, so.
Oh, I appreciate that, Mr. Moore.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I would then be looking as an action item for a motion on this policy, moving forward.
Also move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Borowski, seconded by Mr. Watt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Then we'll be moving on to our government relations discussion this evening. 2 information items there. The first of which is the end of session legislative update.
I was waiting for, I'm passing around the most recent document I have on the end of the 23-25 legislative session within the state of Wisconsin. I was hoping to have another update later last week, but it didn't come, but that's okay. This still gives us plenty to just high-level overview. First of all, the session is over, so nothing else will be moving forward. It starts with some of on the bottom of the front page, some of the bills that the governor vetoed. One which was to require schools to admit certain federally chartered youth organizations once a year for recruiting purposes. There was some thought of, like, you have to let the Boy Scouts in, you have to let the Girl Scouts in, and different groups like that during school actual time, as opposed to like after school or before. Another thing he vetoed was school boards employing a superintendent or a school district administrator that is not licensed. He also vetoed, this was actually the bill on the back, Mrs. Voigt, that was the Brown Deer bill on allowing paraprofessionals to become teachers in their own school district. That was vetoed by the governor. And then one on competitive bidding thresholds. He passed, however, the rest within the boxes. Some pieces regarding Act 20, which is the science of reading legislation, mandatory early literacy professional development. We have that starting this summer for principals and then next summer for teachers. There's also one further down where it talks about, where is that one? Oh, it's right in there too, I'm sorry. Expands the training opportunities and makes the first of 3 required literacy screenings optional. So part of that is the state has to pick the screener that all of us are going to use going forward. That's going to come out in July. And part of the thought is it might be difficult for one vendor to have all these school districts get on board, everybody's data get into their system to do it right away in September. We have plans to use our current screener if we can't make that work, so we do get off the start we want. But you can then start later, like into the winter, give yourself a little bit more time. So that's interesting. Interesting one, we're modifying some rules to allow marriage and family therapists to also serve as mental health practitioners in school systems. Again, seeing that need for different types of mental health services and trying to find people who are equipped to do it. So you can read through the rest. We got quite a significant late start here today, but just at least a little bit of a summary of where it all shook out, and now there's going to be quite a quiet period, which will build into our next agenda item.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore had a question or comment.
Where do I start? So, I just have we're going to say this for the record, and I can care less. With not the superintendent. I'm so sorry. The governor have the ones he vetoed and the ones he approved. This is just my opinion as a school board member. He approved the marriage and family therapists to serve as mental health practitioners in school systems, which I understand because of the shortage of mental health workers in the schools. But, not here in Waukesha, we're very grateful, I will say, for us, being equipped with staff. But, our neighboring districts, and we may need to, if we ever come to this point, the paraprofessionals being able to develop into teachers, and having that experience, why take that away from them? And why take that away from a school district who may be short of staff of teachers? If they have the experience and have the college credits and working toward the bachelor's degree, I don't get why that is an issue. But, I don't know. It's unfortunate. And so I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments moving forward? Let's then move on to our second discussion item under government relations, which is the spring and summer legislative contact and connection meetings.
All right, so when the legislative cycle ends, that's generally a good time to try to figure out some times that we can bring legislators into the district to have meetings, give them tours of specific programs, and do different things. And that's usually in the second year of the biennium, once they have the budget approved and we already know what our budget's going to look like for next year. So I will start to work on setting those up, and we've done that in the past. And Mr. Zenobia has been part of some of them. Mrs. Voigt's been part of some of them. We'll set them up. We'll see. I work through their representatives that are helping them. We get them on the calendar. I let you all know, and any of you that would like to come and sit and join us, we have a discussion around things that are important to us. We've had some different types of documents that we've created over the years. We actually just recently updated our document that we use to advocate for the state budget to be a little more community friendly. We can use a document like that, talk about things that are important to them, and most importantly, just develop that connection and relationship that continually is helpful. And where it's helpful is then when they're reaching out, like what we're starting to have now about different bills, and what do you think about that? And they reach out to certain board members, they reach out to me. Those are good things where they're asking, what's the impact of this bill mean to you? And it's also an opportunity to talk about some things like Mrs. Voigt's been talking about fire drills, for example, and whether or not that should be like a WASB resolution, or should that be something we take directly to a legislator? And maybe we start with a legislator, right? And we kind of toss it out and see if you haven't already.
Actually, Betty has.
Oh, Betty has.
She has a direct connection with Scott Allen.
Oh,
And
nice.
she just talked to him informally about it. And it started to bounce around, like what kind of language might be appropriate. One of the things that's considered is, like, instead of every month having a fire drill, every other month, and the alternate month do other, like, weather-related drills, and the lockdown drills and things like that, that they can still have a drill type of activity every month, but not necessarily have to have it be a fire drill, and then these other ones added on besides. So he thought it was a great idea.
good.
So when they just informally talked about it, just as a kind of
Sure.
friendly conversation. So it's already been, the seeds have been planted.
Oh, good. So there's just one great example, and then I'll start setting those up, and then if you can join us, great. If you can't, we'll do some reporting out at our future meetings on how they're going. Mr. Wad, sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Dr. Siebert, with the new maps that have been drawn as a result of the Supreme Court case, well, I guess it was ultimately signed through the legislature and by the governor. Do we know, are there any changes to the legislators who will have some portion of the district? I think we had just Scott Allen and Representative
We have quite a few, actually. So, I mean, we have a lot of small portions of communities.
Right.
So, one of the new ones we picked up is Dave Maxey. He's new to us. And then there
Is
is,
he represent currently the, sort of the Brookfield area, is that right?
he's out of New Berlin, I believe.
Berlin, okay.
We still have, Mr. Moore mentioned Adam Nealon.
Adam Nealon.
Scott Allen is still with us. We did have Senator Koyenga. We no longer have him. We have his replacement, whose name is escaping me. I can see him.
Is that Hutton?
Yes, Senator Hutton.
Okay.
Yep.
And
So
I would
some,
assume Cappinga?
yes. So some people those are our group. So some people that we haven't had great connection with, little connection with Senator Hutton, talked on the phone with Mr. Maxey, but it'd be nice to get to know them more in person. When we went to the day at the Capitol last March, we met basically with their, their team? You know, I can't think of what they.
Administrative assistant?
Their assistants, yes. Not always with the actual individuals. So, but, I mean, obviously Representative Allen being right here in Waukesha, we have a deeper connection with him, but the goal will be to build that deeper connection with all of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Voigt?
Mrs. White.
So really, in that vein, you're thinking about inviting all of the old members or the new members or both, or who are you considering inviting?
I was thinking our current legislators.
Okay.
That are in our representative district as of now,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, because that wouldn't change until January of.
Right.
Of 5?
5,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so that'll be good. And, yeah, generally speaking, I mean, we like to do them usually one at a time, because that allows us to have that personal interconnection, you know, but if it works for a few of them to come together, that's fine, too. And I recognize you have jobs, it's not like your priority to come and do that necessarily, but if it fits your calendar, lovely, and if not, I'll report out on how they're going.
Yeah, I had a chance to sit on a couple, it's probably already been a year and a half at least, I think, that we had that other round. And it's great to sit with them all because you get them in a room and they all like to talk education, and it's helpful, I think, for them and certainly for us. So it's kind of a great way to meet them, get to know them, like you said, maybe advocate for some things, so.
Absolutely.
Ms. Voigt?
I think especially because we have such a head start in terms of the Act 20 implementation, it'd be good to have them come and see, it in action.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to, we've been doing a lot of things right, with the tech ed programs and the dual, credit through WCTC and just a variety of the kinds of things that we are doing well.
Sure.
And to be able to, let them see that in action, I think is really powerful.
Absolutely. I thought you were going to say dual language,
No,
which
no.
is another thing we do.
Dual language is something
Yes,
we do very well,
yes,
yes.
yeah. No, that's good.
Yes. And
Yes.
a lot of, legislators don't know the kinds of things that we're, able to do in the classrooms.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it'll be fun. So I'll get working on those, and Julie and I'll get them all set up. It'll be good.
Well, thank you, Dr. Siebert.
bet.
That wraps up our government relations discussion for the evening. The last order of business then would be any recommendations for future meetings? And seeing none, that would conclude our meeting for this evening. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.